What happens when a Spanish police officer solves a murder, only to realize the biggest mystery is inside his own heart. This is the true, emotional, mind-twisting journey of Alejandro Cruz, a Catholic detective who found Islam while chasing a killer. What he discovered will shake you. What he felt will break you. And how Allah guided him will give you goosebumps. The detective who found Allah while solving a crime. In the heart of Madrid, where ancient cathedrals stood beside modern glass towers and the city pulsed with history and heartbeat, lived a seasoned police officer named Alejandro Cruz, a devoted Catholic Christian known for his sharp instincts, unbreakable discipline, and unwavering loyalty to truth. Yet beneath his calm and collected exterior lived a quiet emptiness he never spoke about. A hollow space he believed had something to do with the pieces of his life that never fell into place. No matter how much he prayed inside churches lit with candles and the faint scent of burning incense. And it was during one cold November evening when this emptiness began to shift as he was assigned to investigate a mysterious case that had shaken the entire city. An unknown man found dead in an abandoned apartment with a strange symbol etched into the dust beside his body, a symbol that looked like a half-crescent meeting a broken star. And though the crime scene showed no signs of forced entry, no fingerprints, no camera footage, the victim's face seemed strangely peaceful, almost as if he had died in the middle of prayer, and something about that expression unsettled Alejandro in a way he could not explain, for it reminded him of a serenity he himself had never tasted. As he searched through the victim's belongings, he found only one thing of significance: a small black book with Arabic calligraphy on the cover, the letters swirling like delicate vines, and inside it were verses, translated into Spanish, talking about a God who is one, who does not tire or sleep, who knows what lies within every heart. And reading those words made Alejandro pause because they felt strangely familiar, yet deeply different from anything he had learned in church, and curiosity tugged at him like an unseen whisper. So that night he took the book home, turning its pages long after midnight, reading verses about patience, trials, forgiveness, the day of judgment, and the mercy of Allah. And though he couldn't understand all of it, something awakened in him, a pull, a recognition, a soft light forming inside the emptiness he had carried all his life. The next morning he returned to the station where he traced the victim's identity to a man named Yusuf Delgado, originally named Javier, before he had converted to Islam 2 years earlier, a quiet graphic designer with no criminal record, no enemies, and a simple lifestyle. But what puzzled Alejandro the most was how everyone who knew Yusuf spoke of him as someone incredibly calm, peaceful, and gentle, the kind of man who would help neighbors, feed stray cats, and spend nights reading Quran in the park. And as Alejandro dug deeper, he discovered that Yusuf used to attend a small masjid on the outskirts of the city. So he drove there out of duty, but felt strangely nervous as he stepped inside the mosque where warm lights glowed softly and the scent of musk faintly lingered. An elderly imam with kind eyes welcomed him and invited him to sit. And when Alejandro introduced himself as the officer investigating Yusuf's death, the imam's face fell with genuine sorrow, for he spoke of Yusuf as a man who had recently been troubled, mentioning that Yusuf said he felt followed or watched by someone. And before Alejandro could ask more, the imam gently handed him a Quran in Spanish, saying, "Sometimes understanding a man begins with understanding what he loved." And though Alejandro didn't believe in coincidences, the weight of the book in his hands felt strangely reassuring. As he continued the investigation, he found security footage from a metro station showing Yusuf being followed by a tall man with a gray hoodie, his face shadowed, and Alejandro tracked that figure to a building near Plaza Mayor. But the apartment was empty, the electricity cut off, the windows boarded, and only one clue remained: a piece of paper with the same half-crescent symbol drawn roughly in pencil. And the moment Alejandro picked it up, he felt chills sweep across his spine, as if he had touched something forbidden. Night after night, as he tried to piece together the mystery, he found himself returning to the Quran out of something beyond curiosity, reading verses about truth and falsehood, about how Allah guides whom He wills, about how hearts find peace only in His remembrance. And these verses began softening the hardened walls inside him, so much so that during an evening church service, he suddenly realized he was repeating Quranic phrases in his mind instead of the prayers being recited, and he felt something shift so deeply that he walked out of the cathedral before the service ended. Meanwhile, the case grew stranger because forensic reports showed no signs of struggle, poison, or illness. Nothing except a faint trace of soil on Yusuf's fingertips. Soil that matched the kind found only in a specific rural region 2 hours outside Madrid. And so Alejandro drove there immediately, through winding roads and silent fields until he reached an abandoned farmhouse where he felt an eerie calmness and fear intertwining like threads in his chest. Inside the farmhouse, he found traces of another presence: footprints, burnt matchsticks, cigarette ash, a faint smell of cologne. And in one corner of the farmhouse, he discovered a prayer mat still folded, as if someone had once prayed there before leaving in a hurry. And beside it, he found a torn page from the Quran with verses talking about patience in trials and trusting in Allah completely even when the world feels dark. And reading those verses in such a lonely place made Alejandro's chest tighten, for he felt as if the words were speaking directly to him. Suddenly he heard footsteps behind him, and before he could react, a shadowed figure lunged at him, knocking him to the ground, a knife glinting in the dim light. But Alejandro managed to block the blow and wrestle the man until he pinned him down, and when he tore off the man's hoodie, he saw a cold, narrow face he recognized from the metro footage, the same man who followed Yusuf, who now whispered with a chilling smile, "You're too late." He already knew, and though the man refused to speak further, Alejandro later discovered through interrogation that this man belonged to a strange extremist group that had been threatening Muslims in secret, believing that new converts were betraying the old faith, and Yusuf had been targeted simply because he chose Islam, and the symbol near his body was the group's mark. After days of interrogation, surveillance, and tracking several leads, the entire group was arrested, but despite the victory, Alejandro found himself unable to forget the peace he saw in Yusuf's face or the tranquility hidden inside the words of the Quran he had read late at night. And one evening, as he sat alone in his apartment reviewing case files, he opened the Quran again, his eyes falling on the verse, "Indeed, Allah guides whom He wills." And suddenly he felt tears fall, unbidden, uncontrollable, because for the first time in his life he realized what the emptiness inside him had been, distance from the truth. And in that soft, trembling moment, he whispered words he didn't fully understand but felt deeply. "O Allah, guide me if this is the truth." And what happened next shook him more than any crime scene, any interrogation, any horror he had faced in his career. For as he whispered, a wave of peace washed through him, so powerful that he felt as if invisible chains had snapped from his heart, leaving light in their place. After weeks of learning, reading, and speaking to the Imam, Alejandro made the decision that would change his life forever. He accepted Islam quietly at dawn inside the same mosque where he once walked in as an investigator, and with tears in his eyes he repeated the Shahada, feeling as if he had finally returned home after wandering lost for years. Months later, standing outside the masjid after far as the sky softened with pink light, he thought of Yusuf, the man whose peaceful face had started it all, and wondered if Allah had written this path for him long before he ever knew it. And though the case was closed, the real mystery had been solved within his own heart: how Allah guides whom He wills, through signs, through people, through events that seem random but are perfectly written. And as Alejandro walked away from the masjid with a new name, Ali, he felt life beginning again, with faith replacing emptiness, purpose replacing confusion, and light replacing darkness. For he had not only solved a murder, he had solved himself, his soul, his purpose, and that became the greatest discovery of his life. If this story touched your heart, imagine how many hearts you can touch by sharing it. Support the mission of Deen in Minute, a channel dedicated to reviving faith, hope, and the remembrance of Allah in short, powerful content. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. And if you want more emotional Islamic stories like this, comment more stories below. May Allah guide us all and make us a source of guidance for others.